All right, so are you ready for this?
Dude.
We're going deep, and I mean deep into Vybz Kartel's world. This isn't just another music bio, though.
Right.
This deep dive, this is about a whole life reshaped, after more than a decade in prison.
Yeah.
And what happens next?
Absolutely.
So we're breaking down his first interview after getting out with his wife and son. And get this, it's all on Keyshia Kawar's show.
Oh, wow. That's incredible. It's amazing how this interview, you're just thrown right into Kartel's world. You know, they filmed it in Jamaica, and it feels so raw and real. You just can't get that in a studio.
No, not at all. It's like you're right there in Jamaica with him, the world boss.
Exactly, exactly.
And speaking of world boss, for anyone who needs a quick refresher, Vybz Kartel, he's a legend, a true icon when it comes to dancehall.
He really is.
And dancehall, that's not just music, is it?
No, not at all. It's like completely intertwined with Jamaican culture. It's raw, it's real, reflects daily life there. I mean, Kartel's lyrics, even when they were controversial, they resonated with so many people because he was real. He wasn't afraid to go there.
Exactly. And that's what made him such a global phenomenon.
Yeah.
I mean, remember the whole Free the Boss movement online?
Okay. Yeah.
The hype before he got out was unreal. So to hear him now talking about his time inside, it's really something.
You can feel like the weight of all those years, especially when he talks about his health, or even just like the struggle to get basic things in prison. It humanizes the whole experience.
It really does, and it's not something you hear about often. And then he just casually mentions that he never actually thought he'd be released, not until he heard it on the radio.
Wow.
After all that fighting to be free, he still had doubts.
Yeah, it really makes you think about what it does to someone psychologically to carry a sentence like that. 12 years, almost 13, it's a long time.
It really is.
And it makes his faith, which he talks about a lot, even more interesting. I mean, even when things seemed impossible, he held on to hope.
It makes you wonder, how do you reconcile faith and doubt like that?
Yeah.
Like, did hearing it on the radio just change everything for him in that moment? And then he mentions having a cell phone in prison. What?
Right.
That one got me.
That detail about the cell phone, it's so telling. You know, it challenges everything we think we know about prison, and it highlights the inequality. And he doesn't just mention it in passing either. He goes on to criticize the Jamaican prison system for that inequality, the lack of rehabilitation. It's all about punishment, not reform.
It's like that one detail, the cell phone, it opens up this huge conversation about the justice system and how complicated it is.
For sure. It makes you wonder how much of what we believe about prison is true and how much is just what we think we know. It really makes you think about how we view these systems, you know? They should be about breaking these cycles, but a lot of times they just perpetuate them.
It's true. And then he says this, if you don't have money, you suffer.
Wow.
That's real. That's not just Jamaica, that's everywhere.
Yeah, it's a tough reality. Those socioeconomic factors, they have such a huge impact on how people experience the justice system. I mean, both in prison and when they get out.
Yeah, absolutely.
We see it with how many people end up back in prison if they can even get a lawyer.
Yeah.
Even just the conditions in prison. That's a lot.
It really makes you think about the human cost of all this. Like, hearing him talk about his kids.
Right.
That got to me.
Yeah.
They were so little when he went in, and now they're grown. He even became a grandfather while he was locked up.
It's like, you know, we talk about second chances and rebuilding your life, but that is a whole other level.
I know, it's a lot to process. And then he talks about reuniting with them, getting to know them again.
There's just this vulnerability there you might not expect, you know?
Right, exactly. And it's that complexity that makes this whole deep dive so fascinating. He's not just some icon. He's a dad, a grandfather. I mean, he's been through so much, lost so much time, and he's trying to figure out this world that's totally moved on without him.
It makes you wonder what that would even be like.
Right. And speaking of figuring things out, this guy is not shying away from, going for it. New music, a record label to help young talent, businesses. He's got plans.
He's got drive, that's for sure. Wants to conquer it all.
And he says, this is a quote, I want to pick up where I left off. But he also knows things have changed, like, a lot. Music's different now, streaming, social media.
Yeah, that's a whole other world.
So what do you think? Can he really be the world boss again in this new landscape?
It's a good question. It would be huge, that's for sure.
What do you think he'd need to do? Like, what are the biggest challenges for someone trying to come back after so long?
I think, for one, he has to deal with how people see him. Those controversies from before, they didn't just go away. Can't ignore that.
It's almost like he has to introduce himself to the world all over again.
In a way, yeah. But it's also a chance for him to tell his own story now, to kind of change how people see him.
And we know he can do it. Even from prison, he was putting out music.
Right.
That says a lot about his talent. But music is tough. New people are popping up all the time. Can he keep his old fans and get new ones, you know, the younger generation?
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
His fans are loyal, but to really get back on top, he's got to reach those younger people who might only know his name, not his music.
It's going to be interesting to see what he does. And speaking of interesting, this is where the Keyshia Kawar interview gets really unexpected love. So we have this image of Vybz Kartel, world boss, right? This huge persona making a comeback. And then we meet his wife.
Yeah.
A fan, like a dedicated fan who moves to Jamaica while he's still locked up.
Wow.
It's wild, right? And it changes his whole story.
It really does.
We talk about second chances, rebuilding your life, but this is something else. They have this whole courtship thing going on, letters, phone calls, whatever they could do while he's inside. And people doubted her, judged her, but she never gave up on him.
It's really her belief in him, in them. It's amazing.
Yeah.
It makes you think about how we see someone like Kartel. You know, we see the world boss, the controversy, but then there's this love story.
I know, like a movie or something.
Right.
Imagine falling for someone you haven't even met. She even tells Keyshia she thought it was a catfish at first.
I get it. Online dating, right?
Right.
Wondering if it's real. But can you imagine that on a huge scale, the whole world watching?
Yeah, that's a lot of pressure.
Totally.
And it makes you think, what does it say about him to find that kind of love, that support while in prison?
It's huge.
And it goes back to how complex people are.
Yeah.
Like, we're not just one thing, you know? Kartel's story, it's ambition, controversy, talent, and now this deep love. We got to look past the surface. The headlines, no one is just one thing. And honestly, that's what makes this whole deep dive so interesting. Vybz Kartel, his story's not over, not even close. It's about transformation, second chances, connections. So now that he's out, rebuilding his life, his career, what's he going to do?
That's the question, isn't it?
What will his legacy be?
Who knows? Only time will tell. But one thing's for sure, Vybz Kartel, he keeps us guessing, keeps us thinking. There's always something more to learn.
And that's the beauty of a good deep dive, right? You never know where it'll take you. So what about you? What do you take away from Vybz Kartel's world? What will you be thinking about? We'll leave you with that.